Hey everyone, it's your old pal Mike here at Flat Earth Archive. I'm really excited this evening to have a doctor of geocentric cosmology, Stephen Alonzo, on. I don't remember when I first came across his content, but I know it was on Facebook, and I know it was definitely prior to, Will Duffy's 24-hour sun observation, and he's got an amazing app. He's going to cover some really fascinating things this evening. He's also got a university, but I know he's going to dive into all of that. Little feedback on the debate I saw with him and Will. Steven, I thought you had excellent composure. You answered, very effectively, very efficiently. And I have some questions on I forgot what you call it, the Lorentz expanse transform or something, but
Rents ether transform. We can go over
yeah,
that
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and then but overall, man, it was great. Will Duffy, for those who didn't see it, I felt like spent most of his time really just going after more of Steven's credibility and character than actually taking the time to pick this man's brain and maybe try to learn a little something. But I think those of us who have been watching Will for a while realize he's got his course set, it seems like, and he's not about really retaining information, it seems like. So, but with that being said, Stephen, maybe it would be cool if maybe you start off with a little bit of your background on, because I'd love to hear how you came to this subject matter in the first place, and then the floor is yours, lead into whatever you want. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me on. Many of you know me from the Flat Earth University, the Firmament Tracker's Flat Earth app, and I'm very active on both Facebook and YouTube. So recently I did the debate with Will Duffy, and Mike, your review was wonderful to hear from that, and it was quite interesting for sure. After seeing how he handled Joe, I kind of knew what to expect. But it was interesting to see him behave that way. And then I hope now I can cover a lot of the stuff that we didn't really get to show with Will for people who are interested to follow up on that. So I have a whole bunch of stuff that I'd love to talk to you tonight, especially about the 24-hour sun, how light shines through a firmament, the observer centric, kind of why I believe that we have a dome over us.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, just dive right into wherever you want to start. Now, how did you first hear about this subject in the first place? Like, what brought Flat
5 years
Earth?
ago, it would be the general conspiracy YouTube channels. It would be, I'm trying to think what it would be originally. Maybe like looking into the moon landing and then other people inside. You know how if you're in like a Tartaria group, someone will just post like a flat Earth thing and you're kind of just brought to eventually learning about it. Now, I first heard of it maybe like in 2012, too, like so far back that it was like a joke at that point. But 5 years ago, I actually started taking it seriously. And I guess the first thing that really, really caught my mind was the moon map. I'm not sure how familiar with you are with the idea of the moon, the plasma moon being a reflection of Earth. And I just saw for the first time ever a side-by-side photo of the moon and a map of Earth. And that kind of gave me a starting point to work with. It was like, this is something objective, whether it's actually 100% real or not.
Yeah.
It kind of wanted me to actually test this. And that was one of the major things that brought me into looking into flat Earth. And then I guess Eric Dubay would have been the major video kind of creator back then, maybe 5 years ago when I was first getting into it. But what I really liked about Flat Earth was that it kind of forces you to really learn a lot of the stuff that we kind of forget since we grew up. Like, how does an eclipse even work on a globe? Like, we don't really think about that unless we're kind of studying this. So I actually really enjoyed relearning a lot of the scientific concepts. And then, as you know, there's multiple ways to interpret them. And I just found that the flat Earth community itself was very scientific, friendly, and wanting to learn about a lot of stuff that other people just don't want to talk about, or you're not even allowed to talk about it, or they like laugh at you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's interesting that the moon played a part in your coming around to this stuff because that's kind of what grabbed my attention. and this was in 2017. I didn't even know there was a debate on the shape of the Earth whatsoever. I'd never heard of it. And from my perspective, I feel like just the Holy Spirit sort of put this random nagging about the moon, just so nonsensical, dude. Just out of the blue, I start just wondering about the moon, going through every video I could watch in a weekend, like maxing out all my time, just everything I could see from like little kids' presentations on up, like to the best stuff you could find. And I was like, some of these phases and the locations, the umbra, the penumbra, it doesn't seem like it's lining up to me. And that's what got my journey started. So it's kind of cool, like, to hear that perspective. Rob Skiba was an early one for me. I wish Rob was around to investigate your app and play with it because I feel like he would have just had a field day with some of the capabilities on that thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's extremely cool. I got into wanting to develop that maybe 1 year ago when I first saw the Walter Bislin model. So that was the sun and the moon, but that was it. Like the map didn't even work. But then I got really excited when I saw that because it's actually in 3D and it kind of helped me learn a lot of the advanced concepts. Then I got inspired to do it properly. So start from a proper foundation this time that would allow me to add in the planets, add in the Southern Cross, get a map that actually has continents on it. And because I have years of experience in software development, I was able to kind of build a proper framework that now it's really easy to add in new features. So right now I'm thinking of like possibly a friend finder, but on the Gleason map and adding in a lot of more social features where right now it was only academic based. It's a really powerful model, but now in like the firmament trackers group that I have, a lot of us want to go outside and start taking photos of celestial objects and kind of pairing it together. So I really love the features that I've developed, and that was really what helped me understand a lot of the more advanced concepts, like the 24-hour sun, being able to, I guess, model out stuff that can was never done before. So you know how the South Pole is a very confusing concept. How do we have infinite potential apparent objects and modeling that out? And my software allowed me to really understand it, and it made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. I'd love for you to give the foundation of your app, your background in software design, just so people get a little taste of who you are and your background in that. Because I feel like it's just such awesome timing. How do I put this? Okay, so I saw your model, your 3D rendering of how the 24-hour sun would operate prior to Will even being there. And then Dave, I believe, put a side by side with your animation and the footage of the sun, and it behaved essentially just as you predicted in your model ahead of time prior. And I've seen Will Duffy kind of hit you and say, "Oh, you're just taking things from the globe." But then every time I hear you break down why you came to those conclusions, you can see that it's your own foundation essentially. Like, yeah, but
So one of the best things about the sun is that it follows the same pattern every year. So you can make these predictions without having to even use complex models. So the 24-hour sun, to predict it, is something anyone can really do when you understand that kind of observer-centric foundation, which is what I teach from a local reference frame that, like right now, wherever you live in California and wherever I live in Belize, our moon right now would be a little related to each other. And through that, we know the perspective, the angular rate of change, whether it's due to curvature or due to perspective, it doesn't really matter from that local reference frame. So the math is 100% valid. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't like because they'll try to say, oh, it's glow math. But then when you actually show it to them how it works, I think I can do this right here. So it's very, very easy. For example, I live in Belize, and this is the same type of math that I implemented into my app. So a major difference from me and Walter Bislin is that Walter Bislin hard coded a reverse engineered heliocentric model to troll flat earthers. So that's why it's impossible to actually expand on it because the way he did it, you're stuck doing like the sun elevation and compass azimuth, where I went one step further and I'm talking about celestial declination. So my model starts from the observer-centric celestial declination. In my case, I live in Belize. My north celestial pole is 17 degrees from my horizon. You in California, it would be a little bit different, maybe like 40, 30 degrees. But essentially, the angle of elevation of Polaris is where your latitude is. And it's a one-to-one relationship. It always is. So this is before we would even talk about projecting it out to an oblate spheroid or projecting it out to the North Polar AE map. But this starting foundation is what every model has to use. And I'm very fair. I accept that the theoretical math behind the globe is valid, but I argue that it makes a lot more sense to just keep it flat and project it out because there's no reason to project it to a sphere. But what a lot of people need to remember is that the globe is an oblate spheroid. It's not a perfect sphere. So when people see like these little perspective grids on the flat earth models or any astronomical model, it's important to remember that these are not mini globes. These are perfect spheres that do exactly what I just said, that one-to-one relationship. There's no projection because the globe has a minor axis and major axis that are different. And there's models like the WGS 84 where it is a projection of that. So no matter what you're doing, you're starting with that little dome. And I show the globe model at the top. It's one of the best globe models there are. And they cut off the dome because they don't want to make it very obvious what they're doing. But this concept is what every astronomical model does. So those of you who have used Stellarium before, there would be, it'd be on this side, there'd be a little menu button where you can turn on the equatorial grid. Now, what the globe does is they put you in the first person view of a flat Earth model. So if you see those grids there, that looks very similar to what I was just showing you over here. So imagine those little people are where you are. That is the starting point for any astronomical model, and you can take it farther and do different types of projections. You may or may not be familiar with the Awake Souls group who argue the oblique Mercator SVR projection. They're theoretically as valid as the globe argument is because they're still starting with this first observer-centric starting point. So that was a whole bunch to cover, but that is the foundation of the model, the math behind that observer-centric model. And then when we project it out, it's very basic math. The math to project it to the North Polar AE is only maybe 10 or 20 lines of code. And then my argument is if you're going to project it out to an oblate spheroid, you have maybe 50 or 100 lines of code. It's a lot more complicated and unnecessary because it's the tangent to a curve,
Yeah.
mathematically valid, but way more complex. And I do believe in a creator. If a creator is going to create our world, it's going to be very simple, just like the code. There's no reason to complicate it if it works for most stuff the way it is.
Yeah. And I think most people, when they first see your projected view with the various, like when you have multiple observer points and the little mini domes, a lot of people get confused by that. And I've seen Globers respond to it and they'll get almost frustrated, like, oh, he's claiming that we each have our own little mini like dome over us. And what they don't understand is that any software they utilize is going to show that same as like azimuthal grid. Like that perspective is going to be given on what, like you brought up on Stellarium or any of these other apps. They give you that same first person. They just don't understand that yours is capable of expanding to multiple observers. It's
Yeah, I show
complete.
the third person bird's eye view, and everyone is used to the first person stellarium view.
Yeah.
And when you go to that globe model that I was just showing you over here, I think it's called the Dr. Marsh globe model. Let me just bring up my camera. It's kind of down for there. But there, it's only for the sun. So the only globe model that lets you go into third person, and this one you're stuck in third person, so you can't even swap between them like the flat Earth model. But all it does is the sun. So no one's really using it. They use stellarium because they want like the stars. They want the same stuff that we use a flat Earth model for, the south celestial pole, whereas the moon, where so people have seen this. I've seen people like Jaron cover this model that I'm showing you for the globe model because people say there is no globe model. Well, there is, but it's limited. So if this is the best globe model that like serious academic institutions are developing, and then here's me, a random flat earther who's doing like, you see how much better mine looks. Like the difference is big, and it's quite interesting. But yeah, you're right. It's the exact same. They're just not used to seeing the third person bird's eye view.
And from my understanding, right, if they did try to like model multiple viewers, it wouldn't really work. Like you're showing in that image there, essentially. Like
Yeah,
it's just
it
whereas
would be weird. You probably could do it, but it wouldn't make sense. So the reason why this projection makes so much sense is because the arrows actually point to where the what's called the GP of the object is. Whereas on the globe model, they're all parallel going off for infinity.
yeah,
And it's a clever trick and it theoretically it works, but I don't believe that the sun is 93 million miles away. I think it's realistically 3,000 miles away. And mathematically, that works if we do have a dome. So, what I argue is the dome refraction. I have a video I can show after that actually lets people understand why this apparent like refraction is actually a real thing. But you notice how the sun is flat. That's not a mistake. I did that so people know that that is the physical sun, the point of dome refraction. So let's say the sun is actually above the dome. I don't know, but the light ray is hitting that spot on the firmament. And I will argue that forever because that's called the ground position, the GP, the zenith. So you know wherever you live, if you look up and the sun would be at like its highest point above your head,
yeah,
that's called the zenith, also called the ground position. There's a latitude and longitude that everyone agrees on. Like it doesn't matter what you think the shape of the earth is. So this model is very accurate and it makes sense because in Brazil, so for that photo right there, in Brazil, if they're looking up, the sun is going to be right above them. And then the refraction is when it gets close enough to the edge of the dome that every observer starts seeing the apparent refracted sun. So if you have any questions, let me know and I can get ready to play a video. I'm just thinking the best way to share a video. Will didn't actually get me to do any videos when I was with him.
yeah. He really didn't. I don't think he wanted to get, well, he clearly did not want to give you a platform to share your ideas. It was just a time for him to try to pepper you. I love some of your trolling books, by the way, the books that like trolled him. If you guys haven't watched the video, there's some funny parts where Will thinks he kind of like catches Steven in something, and then Steven just owns it, and he's like, "Yeah, I got a bunch of trolling books, like men can get pregnant and like stuff like that." It was great. So I just thought that was funny, dude.
Yeah, so I did prepare a lot because I had a feeling Will was gonna do like some tricks, try to do the gotcha thing, similar to like Joe.
Good
There's
joke.
no
Yeah.
logical reason to try to talk about weed. Like it doesn't make sense. So I figured he's gonna do something like that for me. So then I realized that like I do have old books on Amazon. I have like 10 of them, and he's probably gonna choose the pilot one because when I first got into flat Earth, I did participate in a lot of the like the globe troll groups where I'm sure you may or may not be part of them after all the time you've been in flat earth. A lot of people leave those groups because they're very toxic.
Yeah.
But before I found really good groups like the firmament trackers or like your page, I was in a lot of those public groups and I would post those and then see what the Globers say and stuff. So I expected him to pull that up. So then I had like a few images quickly prepared so I could just push like a few buttons and
Yeah.
my camera would just switch. But
That was
I
perfect.
have a book prepared, the most ridiculous one possible that I wrote back then. And then another very important thing, the names on the book. The book that Will pulled up is just Stephen Alonzo, whereas my flat Earth stuff, it's under Dr. Stephen Alonzo. So the branding is completely different. You'll never enroll in the Flat Earth University and see me dressed up as a pilot. So,
Yeah.
so it was
Yeah.
funny though, but for Will's audience, it was more for entertainment, whereas for my audience, it was more to just make sure that I'm able to be calm, respond to everything, not
Yeah.
lose composure. And that was really the hardest part, just being able to calmly smile and be like, Yeah, and that's the best part too, because as you know, I agree with all of his options. I believe like the flat Earth model, now that science has advanced pretty far, there's no reason for us to deny 24-hour sun,
Yeah,
24-hour moons, south celestial poles,
yeah.
even a geographic pole. Will didn't think that I would assign a location on my model where it fits, and I had an answer for everything. So then you're right, you're at the end, he really had no choice but to just try to discredit me. But I think that didn't work in his favor because of his friend Wendy is still a flat earther. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he just tried to, because as you know, when we get into flat Earth, it's not about appeals to authority. That's one of the first things that we look into. We're like,
That's great.
no, not true because he works at NASA. So for us, like that's not a big deal. No one ever, I think, believed me because of my PhD from Flat Earth University or because I dressed up as a pilot and had a book on Amazon. Like I've never had anyone actually say, that's why I believe you, Steven. No, it's because they look at my model, they see the math that I teach them, then that's why they then believe the stuff. And I'm very happy to have a very good group on Facebook. I'm not sure if you're in the firmament trackers or not, but
I can't
I'll make
remember.
sure.
I have to recheck through everything. Was it through Facebook or is it something completely separate?
Oh no, there's a Facebook group for Firmament Trackers. Yeah, there's 28,000 of us. So we're
Okay.
one of the few groups where
I
like all of us, even the 24-hour sun, and a lot of us live in New Zealand. Actually, I have a video I can show since I'm actually talking about the Firmament Trackers. This was what really got me the motivation to do my app. Hold on, can I add in this video?
my cat's coming to say hi. Say hi, cat.
Oh, that's cute. And I think I gotta play this video first. But there's a video that the Flat Earth Pro app. It's that bird's eye view app that everyone uses, and it's a really cool app. One of the my friends, he stitched together 7 of the Flat Earth Pro apps all together in a video at once.
Mm,
And that was the first time I thought of the multi-observers and being able to do that in real time on an app. So I'll show you that after. But since
yeah.
we're talking about the 24-hour sun, I want to show you, I guess, the best demonstration that proves the observer centric kind of concept I'm talking about and how we kind of know that there is a dome over us. And it's a very good starting point for our cosmology. We shouldn't only believe there's a dome above us because the Bible says so or because it looks like Elon Musk is scraping a dome. We should actually be able to get observations ourselves that suggest light is shining through or reflecting through or many options.
Oh, one thing I want to add to that, just for anyone who's listening, is that even within heliocentric cosmology, they have what's called apparent positions for celestial bodies. They also acknowledge that there's a what they would call a physical position of the sun and an apparent position of the sun. So when Stephen's talking about these apparent positions that you see from a particular viewer's position, as opposed to the bird's eye view where you can actually see the physical spot where he's saying that essentially the light is hitting the dome, I would say is kind of how you described it. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's taken into account within heliocentric cosmology as well as everything he's discussing from what he's modeling. So,
Yes. So you'd have to download the Stellarium like desktop version to get access to these advanced features. It's still free, but what Mike just said is true. The globe model acknowledges the difference between the physical sun and the apparent sun. And the best example to describe that is point A to point B. The path that light takes over 93 million miles is just as ridiculous as anything we're going to talk about how a local sun has a firmament and is shining through. So they're equally acknowledged that no matter what model you're doing, the path A to path B of light will always be different. And there is an apparent sun and it's measured. It's not really debated. So this is in Stellarium 24.3, just because people like citations. I brought all this stuff for Will, but he didn't really seem to even ask this stuff. So this is my TFE debate prep folder that I'm going through these right now.
yeah. Yeah, he did not want you to have a platform. Man, you answered very well. That was a great interview. Great debate. Good little discussion. I will give him props for acknowledging a few, giving you a little bit of kudos there too, and then acknowledging where he'd falsely called you out on copying Walter Bislin. I will give him credit on that. At least he's not as bad as some that would just strictly insult you, but he definitely did not want to let you share, I could tell that. So,
It was pretty friendly. A lot of people are gonna think like we're working together behind the scenes. Like he's okay with me wearing the TFE logo. It is really fun, but no, like we're not actually friends at all. And I had no clue what he was gonna do, and I actually gave him all my notes ahead of time, similar to how I gave you one sheet of paper. I gave him like 10 pages of everything I wrote down, and I just said, hey, if there's anything you want me to prepare for, let me know. So when he's asking me about like Amson Scott's travel to like the south. Like I don't know. I'm just thinking on
yeah,
the spot, how
yeah,
could that be possible? And even then, I was still able to give perfectly good answers. So
yeah.
having said that, it was a pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I would kept thinking is like, he came to like try to catch you off guard, not addressing what would like suit your field of study, right? But instead trying to get these like gotcha moments, like you talked about, that traversing of those two guys in the south and they both end up at the same location, thousands of miles apart. It's like your response though was very coherent. And that's what I've always really appreciated about the stuff I've seen from you. Because at first I'll be like, I don't know, is this legit? And then as you break it down and as you explain it and you give your reasoning behind it, like even on like his questions where there was kind of like no context and you had no time to really even study the thing prior, you still, I could see the wheels turning, and you're going, well, this could potentially work. Maybe they could see the South Celestial Pole. And then he's like, no, they followed the sun. And you're like, okay, that would work. And just watching your brain work with it, I can tell you're a man who's really dug into the subject, which is why I like hearing from you on it. Because I can tell you put in the time and the thought process into it to really grasp. You're not just some huckster peddling an app. It's like you really grasp the subjects that you're seeking to portray, and you're also open to scrutiny, as you were saying with him. It's all hypothesis, and if something comes along that discredits an element of it, we make an adjustment from there, and I highly respect that. So,
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. When you have an internally consistent model, you don't really have to kind of study too much, and it's very easy to because you're not making stuff up and you're not memorizing a script. It's based on the facts you told me. How do I input that into my model and what's the output? So you're right. It was really natural ways to respond to Will, and I think the only one thing I said that was wrong, which I want to correct now, was that going to 90 degrees south is not possible. I originally said you would be crushed by the firmament, but again, that was just on the spot, just thinking. But that's not actually true. The firmament can absolutely start past 90 degrees south. So 90 degrees south would be the absolute edge, and then greater than 90 would be where the edge of the firmament is. So in theory, you could absolutely be at 90 degrees looking up and seeing the south celestial pole exactly at 90 degrees, as opposed to what I said, 89.99 degrees.
hmm.
So that's the only real thing that he caught. Because again, I didn't really plan for that, but
Yeah, yeah.
I can absolutely correct that now. And yeah, it was quite nice.
Yeah, yeah. It was a great conversation, man. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, show that stuff on the sun. Yeah, I really want to see these dome
Yeah,
off.
specifically it's the part where he moves the phone. Okay, cool. So let me just give a very easy intro to that. Say every know if you're on the beach watching like the sun set and like the ray of light is going to your feet. And if you have like your friends with you, though, they have their own ray going to their own feet. You can't see theirs and they can't see yours. Now, no one's ever really thought of that. And when you do, it's kind of a big, oh, because like, how does that work? But this was the best you could say proof of concept that I saw for that, and it made so much sense when I saw it. So he has a phone as his camera, the observer, under a parabolic dome, and the light is fixed. That's the really important part. The light at the top is fixed, not moving, and right now he's moving the phone.
Yeah.
And watch what happens to the lights at the bottom part. We can play this back a few times. So it starts at 35 seconds.
Yeah, I've seen this. This is awesome.
So see how it's rotating though?
Yeah.
That's exactly how the South Celestial Pole works as well. So remember how I think I showed a photo of like New Zealand and Chile and they had the Southern Cross kind of rotated? That is like how it all works. And then in my model, because we have multiple observers, I put actually the Southern Cross so I can see how it rotates and it makes perfect sense. So let me just go back to the 35 because this is the really important part that you can have multiple cameras. That's the thing. So there's only one camera
Mm.
there, but if there was another camera facing the other way, it would also be seeing that just inverted. And that's the coolest thing ever. Like I don't know how that could happen, but that's what happens in real life with the sun rays coming to your feet with the south celestial pole. This all happens, and it's kind of what I then call dome refraction.
And to throw a little point on top of that, just for anyone watching, there's a channel called Veritasium, and he did a video on rainbows recently. And he was pointing out how rainbows, each observer is essentially seeing their own personal rainbow in a
Oh,
sense, from
wow.
their perspective. Yeah, from the angle they're looking, not nobody's looking at the same exact placement of a rainbow. Everyone's got, like you're talking about, that ray of sun will come to each observer, and like he's showing with that dome, the optics of the lights, how as it's turning, you're watching that rotate from the viewer's perspective, even though those lights in the top are just stationary. It's incredible how light operates. And again, like I'm sure you've discovered within the flat earth and biblical cosmology community, I've had so much fun learning because it's not just about equations on a piece of paper, although with your stuff, that definitely comes into play, but it's also showing these things physically and replicating them. Even if it's only proof of concept, it's incredible.
A lot of this is proof of concept as well, and that's what's very important to understand. We're being compared to like top level scientists, like even what Will was trying to do with my flat earth university. If I'm being compared to like institutions like Harvard, that's pretty good. So it's really important to remember that it is like oftentimes just regular people like me and you doing our best, and oftentimes our free time as well, because I do software development for my full-time job, and a lot of this stuff is funded through that. Like I have a free app, I have free university courses, because for like this is my passion. I want to have as much influence as I can and teach people this as well. So there is the free app, there is the free university courses as well. So FE 101 you can enroll in right now. In FE 102, I'm calling tracking the firmament, and I'm just finishing up, but it has a lot of math. So people who like math and want to learn stuff like how do you do 24-hour visibility prediction just on flat Earth with a 90-degree right angle using information that you have yourself. That's that celestial declination I talked about earlier. So in that slide that I showed when we first joined, we calculated the negative 23 degrees. In December, anyone themselves can verify that the sun has a celestial declination of negative 23 degrees. That's what you can do that in anywhere. So for me and Belize, this is my math to determine where the sun is. So what you do is you do this last year. So because the sun follows the same pattern, you can go December of last year. Okay, cool. And then, okay, how about this year in Union Glacier? Because latitude has that one-to-one relationship. So that's another really cool thing. This is not globe math or really even flat earth math. It's how just our sky works.
Yeah.
The celestial declination has a one-to-one relationship to what I said earlier, that ground position. So if I go right back here, see right there where that sun is on the dome? It has a celestial declination of negative 23 degrees. Now, this is a sky coordinate. This is something that Stellarium would use. It's something like Joe Hanvey's EQ mount would use to know where in the sky to locate an object. And it's pointing right there. The really cool thing is that the latitude matches the celestial declination. And that's not like a coincidence. I believe that happens because it is a one-to-one flat Earth relationship. So right there, that sun is over the Tropic of Capricorn. You know, the Tropic of Capricorn is at maybe negative 23.5 degrees south latitude. But right about there is roughly, that's my manual calculation. 23 degrees, I just roughly did. You can fine tune it as much as you want. But the sky coordinate maps to a ground coordinate at a one-to-one relationship. It's very intuitive. It makes a lot of natural sense.
Yeah. I love this, man. And I love that you have these courses available for people to learn and dig deeper into this subject matter so they can see how these things operate. It's a wonderful, I love how it's your passion too, just like me, it's like I have a full-time job, but this subject is just so incredible. And for me, it points to the one who made it. I feel like behind all this and all this beauty and how everything operates, it should always be pointing to the one who made it all. So it's just I feel like of course in his timing, like you're saying, he takes one random guy, right? This flat earther, right, to develop a software that's capable of doing something beyond anyone else's software currently. And it
Mhm.
reminds me of Dr. Zach's experiments with lasers. I watched his series of laser experiments. I'm like, here's this flat earther who's doing the most complex, comprehensive series of laser experiments over a few year period, and it's just like unmatched to anything that's out there. Have you seen his stuff prior, Dr. Zach?
Dr. Zach, that doesn't sound familiar to
I
me.
got it. I'll send you this video he did where he mapped the sun over a period of a year and took into account, which maybe you can get into the electromagnetic nature of where we live a little bit, because I know that was on one of your talking points that you wanted to cover. I'll send you this video by him, and hopefully at some point you guys will get in communication because it would be you guys would have a lot to discuss, I feel like. But yeah. Same as George from GeoTruth. You guys could really share some notes on some stuff, I think.
Yeah, so for our Earth's electromagnetic field in general, I believe it's a torus toroidal field, and a lot of people are very well familiar with this. So coincidentally, one of the final experiments was measuring the magnetic field strength. Like they actually use their phone app because in our phones we have like a little device that we can measure like magnetic pole temperature. And they did it at Union Glacier, they did it at Santiago, Punta Arenas. But when they were arguing their case, they didn't let anyone know what the actual North Pole and South Pole was. And that's what I found really interesting because we see that they don't actually equal the same thing, which if the Earth was a globe, you would expect a dipole to kind of have that same symmetry. For example, you know how the globe argues that star trails looking on opposite sides of a ball, they kind of argue that the symmetry is one of their reasons for believing in the globe.
Yeah.
But find that there's a lot of asymmetry that would match kind of what I would argue is that's the best visual I can do in my model for the field strength, but
Hmm.
it's the toroidal field. And the whole point of this is just to clearly show that you're not going to have an equal north and south, which matches the real world observations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is one of the reasons why I feel like it's more logical to argue that if there's many different observer-centric projections, the globe model isn't always necessarily the most intuitive one that makes sense.
Yeah.
In this case, the flat Earth model makes way more sense for magnetic fields.
Yeah. Man, I'm so
And same
grateful.
with toroidal field as well, kind of justifies an equator. Because if you notice, I might be able to zoom this up actually, because the arrangement of this photo has a really good point because you see how the observer, when he's in the middle, he's aligned with the toroidal field and he has the north and south celestial poles at his horizon. So this is how you can really understand why star trails would work the way they do at the equator, which is the middle of our flat Earth. It's not like necessarily the middle of a globe. Many people wonder how can a flat Earth have an equator? Well, it's the middle. It is the exact same. The That's the thing. So that's why I I don't like when people deny the 24-hour sun or any of that stuff because oftentimes it's just they've never had it explained in a really good way that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna oh man, my brain just cut out on me. I was just about to ask something in regards to that and it just left. Oh, what was I gonna say? Stupid brain, dude. I just had such a good question on that. All right. Well, what
So
else?
picture a 24-hour sun
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of people from a bird's eye view because that's a really interesting photo. And again, it's just something that people never
Oh,
really do. So let me see if I can put myself back up here and then
but I
show.
remember what I was going to bring up real quick. So I
Oh yeah.
was reading on your textbook that you had mentioned the operation of gravity within like an infinite plane. And so here, like my understanding when I'm looking at the electromagnetic nature of the world, essentially everything has some form of charge, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. So my understanding of up and down, why things rise and fall beyond obviously density and buoyancy is because the Earth's surface has a negative charge, and then as you raise in the atmos, you get more of a positive charge. So, when it said that little statement on your book, what do you mean by gravity coming into play? Could you expound on that a little bit and just maybe?
So standard classic Newtonian gravity, I believe and argue, can work perfectly fine on a flat Earth. The issue is it has to be on an infinite plane. You
Hmm,
cannot have a floating disk in space, for example, because the gravitational vectors would point towards like the center. So for me, I believe our finite Earth, like the Gleason map, AE map, like we know the size of it, sits on an infinite plane.
interesting.
And if that's true, we end up with gravitational vectors that exactly match what we observe right now. So, although there are many other theories, like what you're saying, the electrostatic theory of gravity, there's a whole bunch of other ones. I never found the need to necessarily have to argue that or go there, although you could absolutely be right. For me, I find the infinite plane kind of makes a lot of sense to me. And then in my model, I just coded that as well. And that's kind of so that gray area you see there is the infinite
Yeah,
plane that Earth
expanse
sits on.
beyond. Yeah.
There's real laws that actually make this valid. It's Gauss's law of gravity. So it's a derivation of Newton's law applied to an infinite plane. So it's calculus, but it's a real law that globers accept, everyone accepts, and we can get a thickness actually to how thick down this plane would have to be. It's infinite across, but we can then make predictions about a thickness of Earth. So right now, we can only dig down 10, 12 kilometers maybe, but there we can make predictions about how thick it would have to be because as you know, if you drop something or let a balloon go, we can measure that acceleration, whether it's due to an electrostatic force or anything else.
Now, in that perspective, then, would you still define, well, how would you define gravity then? Because in a heliocentric model, they would say that it's essentially space-time bending. So what would you, so say it's that infinite plane, right? And the math works, and so it seems to be valid if you had this infinite breadth and then some sort of depth to it, right? So what would you define that force as then? Like, I know
So
you
I
call
don't
it
believe
gravity.
in relativity.
What was it?
So I do not believe in Einstein relativity. So the bending of space-time, I do not believe that is the cause of
Yeah.
gravity. So I accept that there is a 9.81 meter per second downward vector. I don't necessarily know the cause of it.
Okay, okay, cool.
So
Yeah,
but I do believe objects have mass, and I can
yeah,
recognize that there is going to be an attraction.
cool. All
But
right.
the cause is not the bending of space-time, no.
Yeah. Okay.
So as far as Newton got is as far as I would accept.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, see, I've really dug into the electrostatic side of things, and it's been fun digging into that. I love seeing some of the descriptions on how the tides could be affected by that, like the electromagnetic nature of, like, say, the moon, and the salinity of all the oceans and everything. I've seen some real cool, but those are subjects I dig into little by little. I don't claim to fully understand them whatsoever, but it's always fun assessing information, taking it in, weighing it. That's why in the past I've always said, and I know when you were talking to Will, you were kind of like, well, we as flat earthers shouldn't say that we can't make claims or we don't have a model. And I've kind of always been in that position where there are things that I can affirm, there are things that I can negate, and there are unknowns. And since there are so many unknowns, I don't feel like comfortable enough sticking to any set model. But I will say, Stephen, with your modeling and the stuff I've learned from just your research and study, I have more confidence in lean. It's funny how Will's desire to end flat Earth brought
Mm.
me into a situation where I've actually feel like I've taken a major boost in my learning as of recent. It's like what he meant for a negative, the father used for good, because I feel, gee, I don't know. I have more confidence in my understanding as of recent.
Anyone who's still a flat earther now is someone who knows the math, knows the arguments, and isn't just there because I don't know why everyone gets into flat Earth, but a lot of people, like if you did not expect to see a 24-hour sun, or if it's some big huge deal for you, that's kind of a problem with like my community. At least we all were expecting it and it was no big surprise, but it was shocking to see the after effect of, like, I don't know if you believe the final experiment was completely faked, but there's people who are still obsessing over that and they can't move forward because, as I said, they don't make claims, or they'll say, well, what is the sun? I don't know what the sun is. And they end up just being stuck kind of in a
Yeah.
bad area because I want to continually be learning new stuff. And there is actually so much to learn in flat Earth because it goes into every topic, like you were just saying, tides, and now the electrostatic theory of gravity, the moon.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree that it's kind of sad to see a portion of people, but I get it. I get it because it's like the moon landings. It's like all these other lies have been told. So I don't fault their skepticism whatsoever. But at the same time, I've felt like I need to be, as a responsible individual within the community, if I'm going to put forward content, then I need to be aware of what's going on. So I was following Will's journey, every video, all the way through the thing. And when I watched how much they covered, I'm like, these videos where you're saying this is fake or that's fake or they lied, I'm like, dude, I've watched the whole journey up to this, the amount of equipment, the amount of documentation they're providing and everything. I'm like, it can't be faked. And that's why I feel like the Father's always led me to truth too, is stumbling upon your stuff, stumbling upon Joe's stuff. And that's why I say the timing is awesome, because if your stuff had come across my plate, say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know if I would have necessarily dug into it. But because of your modeling, because of your perspective, and then those things being confirmed within observable reality, it brought me into a deeper level of my understanding of how things operate around me. And I feel like this flat earth biblical cosmology journey has just been steps of that. And it's really cool, dude. And I really appreciate the piece you've added. It's great. We need minds and we need each other like this. So yeah,
Thank you.
I'm
That's a good
appreciative.
way to put it because what you just said is true, and it still is true now. A lot of people come across my work, and I'm saying there's a 24-hour sun. Well, that means I believe in the globe. And it can really be off-putting for a lot of people to hear me agree with a lot of the final experiment observations. I agreed with it so much that I made that documentary. I'm not sure if you saw the Blu-ray documentary. I made the Glurf, where I actually argued like all the evidence of, yeah, why it's real. I'm like, I'm calling Nathan Oakley all, and it made perfect sense to me that it is real. And but that's the problem as well, because other community leaders have made hard claims saying it is A 24-hour sun's not possible.
Yeah.
And to admit you're wrong is something that a lot of people can't do either. And it's been really difficult. And I'm just trying to make sure everyone knows that it's okay to progress forward. A 24-hour sun is something that's safe to say. Like, don't pretend TFB is fake just because you think it debunks the model of
Yeah.
your reality, you know?
Yeah, I just felt like that's what they felt like they had to grab to because then what is your response? If it is real from their perspective and they're saying, well, this absolutely can't work on a flat earth, then they've trapped themselves. That's why I am grateful that I never felt like I needed to adhere to anything that I don't fully grasp. I'm just testing things as they come. And so like you said, they're almost like stunting their own growth in a sense instead of being able to move forward with all this great new data and looking at it from how does this operate? Because I want to know the truth. I'm not in a big like globe versus flat. Like I just want to know the truth and wherever that leads. And clearly it leads to a stationary enclosed system. I mean, I can't deny that aspect of it at this point, really. So but yeah, just it's great. Oh, one thing I wanted to throw in that you did mention earlier too was that I love how he hit you about the question of where is the geographic South Pole. And every person I've seen him ask that just gives really vague runaround. And I loved how you pinpointed it, which he was absolutely not expecting. And then I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong about this, please forgive me. But I do feel like the very next video I saw about him, or like another video he had posted, he was saying no flat earther can pinpoint
Yeah,
where this position is. And you
he
had
took it
just
down.
done it.
So
Yeah.
what happened is he had it scheduled for 2 hours after our debate started. So like it started 5 p.m. my time and he had the video set to be at 7 p.m. But it is exactly what you saw. But then he took it down, just released it today. I haven't watched it now. But I'm guessing he might have corrected the part where because you're right, he wasn't expecting me to just push a button and pull this up, but
Yeah.
this is where the geographic South Pole is. So people would go southeast of New Zealand to get there, and that arguably is what makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. That was great, dude. I loved that because you're like, oh yeah, it should be right around here. I loved how you just had such, I could tell that because usually he really pushes back on people, but it seemed like you would give answers and then just have to sort of just move on to his next, like, okay, well, here's my next sort of gotcha moment. How are you going to answer this one? And each time you'd sort of give an answer and I'd see him be like, okay, moving on. Like he just didn't want to. How could he fight it? You know, it was great, man. I loved it. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't think he was prepared, to be honest, because based on I guess even the notes that I gave him, he probably thought that that's all I was like expecting, or all I prepared for. Because I did have like my own personal notes as well, like like the male pregnancy book I prepared for. I had all I just because I had no clue where I was gonna go. I saw Joe's, so I knew the worst case, so I was well prepared.
Yeah.
This image here, I just wanted to pull up because it's a really good explanation of how I think our world would look if like, we could go to the waters above and like go really, really like far out. That's the best way to understand the infinite plane I think we live on. I don't think we're in like a floating disc in space. I don't think there's like an edge we can fall off.
Yeah.
And because of that, the concept of infinity makes perfect sense to me, especially if we do have like a creator who designed this like, and I do believe God's a mathematician based off of how our world works.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I would code into my model would be very similar to how nature itself works at a fundamental level. These types of concepts are not that absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you even think about something like prayer, right? And you think we pray to him. And some people will be like, well, how would he even hear your thoughts? How would he hear your words? This and that. And now we live in a world where we can wirelessly send video feed. And it's like the concepts he talks about in his word it's like we study his creation and we see his brilliance and we see his hand in all these things. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. It's incredible. Now, I've heard models where people talk about multiple layers of the firmament. Like I know the guys in Kingdom of Context, like Sean and Wes, and those gentlemen, they've talked about. Have you thought about any of that? I haven't dug into it too much. I think it's more based on some scriptural references that are outside of, like, say, the 66 book of Protestant canon, which, I trust Enoch, but there's some books out there that I'm on the fence about. But have you looked into
I
any
know
of them?
biblical cosmologists can argue up to seven firmaments.
Okay.
Now, all I know and what I would strongly argue is that the amount of, I don't want to say space because people really hate the semantics of these words, but the amount of like area above the firmament where waters could be and where stars are potentially, I do believe that's very large. So whether there is a lot of other firmaments and the stars are up there, I don't know,
Yeah, I didn't.
but the point of dome refraction, I think the stars are farther up there and we get different angles as they hit the
Mhm.
dome. All I know for sure is the location on the dome that is at the lowest point, you could say to us, that
Yeah.
ground position.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me that maybe like a few thousand more miles above, there is a lot of area there where who knows how it all works.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I was just curious if you'd looked into
But
much of
it's
that.
definitely
Yeah, that's cool.
water above. I would really argue there's water, and then a lot of the stuff we see, like the ionized gas. If you run electricity through a noble gas like helium or hydrogen, you get what look like the stars. And you know how we see like the shape shifting and a lot of the colors. Me living out here in Belize, I have a perfect sky every night because there's no light pollution. So I can really see what looks like electricity and stuff running through water. It's really cool. So
Yeah.
there's definitely water up there above for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool. Now, is there anything else that you wanted to dive into right now? Anything you'd like to cover at the moment? I'm gonna glance. I had a couple notes. I want to see if I didn't get to anything. Oh, Noah, could you talk about the ether a little bit and your understanding of that? And if you know anything regarding the history, because I know at one point it was taken into account in the field of science, and then in modern times it's essentially been removed or ignored in a lot of ways. So is there anything you could
Yeah,
say
now
on
what
that?
you just said, I know what I think that's misunderstood. I've heard people talk about ether on the periodic table being removed, and I think that's misapplied to ether as the substance of matter in the universe that all objects kind of pass through. So
Okay.
the periodic table element ether, I think, is just alcohol ether. I'm not 100% sure on
Yeah.
that, but that is not the same as the ether that we talk about in experiments like Michelson-Morley, for
Yeah.
example. Now, the really important thing I want people to know is that the rigid kind of there's many interpretations of ether and only one's been disproven. So me, I would agree with any experiment someone would bring up like Michelson Morley where they disproven a rigid ether. Now what I believe is a fluid ether and also a local reference frame where Earth is the primary reference frame. Now I'm not the best to fully explain the arguments behind this. I always tell to go to Shane St. Pierre and space audits. Those guys know way more than me. But mathematically, how it works is the Lorentz ether length transform. The coolest thing about this is that special relativity started using it as their mathematical proof. So it is, I guess you say, a concept that everyone agrees on. Now, how I apply it to our flat Earth is I argue that's how distances are measured and contracted.
Mm.
We really have two options. So on the globe heliocentric model, they use general relativity and the bending of space-time where time can actually change. Now, I don't believe that's possible, and I believe the application to flat Earth, where we just have an ether framework that can, you could say, expand and contract distances, makes more sense to me. And then with the dome structure, if we have a dome structure with the fluid ether, it then supports the argument of the different behavior as it stretches north to south.
Okay.
So again, it's all theoretical, but for me to argue a coherent model of flat Earth makes it very logical, testable, and matches the real world.
Is there so my brief understanding, it's kind of like is it kind of like a background medium, would you say, that everything is traveling through? Sound
Yeah,
like
that's
all
the
that?
best way
Okay.
to describe it.
Okay. Yeah, very
Something that
cool.
all matter travels through encompasses.
Okay, perfect. Let me look on here. Oh, what was it like? How have your conversation with Joe Hamvey been? Because again, prior to the final experiment, you and Joe Hamvey came across my path, through my feed and everything on Facebook. And I remember sending you a message at one point being like, "Oh, I feel like this guy is physically modeling what you're mathematically modeling," and you're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we've discussed." So what have you guys, any little insights on that or little bits of
Yeah, the
news?
way you phrase perfect. He was physically modeling what I was like visually, mathematically modeling, and it worked out perfect.
Yeah.
Now with Joe, nothing's changed with him, but I think he stopped making as much public videos because as soon as he started doing it, he attracted so much hate from
Yeah.
the Globers, and it's a very controversial subject as a flat earther to be even talking about the possibility of a 24-hour sun. So
Yeah.
he has all his content there, but I don't think he is as active right now in promoting it, where right now I'm kind of in the zone right now doing all my side of the stuff. But for him, it's all still the same. He still believes in the 24-hour sun. And for the Firmament Trackers Facebook group, he's one of the admins there. So he's still posting every day. And
Oh,
I
awesome.
guess right now, where he is most active in is talking to people who think TFE was fake. The
Oh,
most recent thing I saw him talking about was where like there was a stitch line in one of the sky photos, and he was supporting the idea of, yeah, that's actually how 360 cameras work, and it's really hard to stitch it up. So what I really like about Joe is that he knows, believes TFE was real. He has no reason to deny a 24-hour sun, and
yeah.
he's actually out there doing similar stuff to that video I showed you earlier, where people are putting lights through domes, and that's the best thing we can do. For me in Belize, I'm trying to figure out the most affordable way now to get a dome sent to me, but in the States right now, I think that's the best thing people can do if they ship them from Amazon. I'm not sure where Joe's getting his from, but it's absolutely fascinating to be seeing that with Joe.
Yeah, I love the timing of that because you were like two sides of the coin for me in the understanding of that whole experiment, that observation in Antarctica. They just went hand in hand. The way he was modeling it physically with his dome optics and your mathematical digital model was just awesome. That software is incredible, dude. Yeah, right
And it's really
people, right timing.
prior to TFE2, not a lot of people had actual domes where they were doing more of the advanced stuff. Like I was looking back on footage and I did find a lot of people did it, but never too advanced. So let me just zoom out here. I wanted to see like what were people doing with like the dome refraction. There's tons of people doing it, but it was at a very basic level. No one really got into it. And so like the last you could say maybe year now, because it started yeah, TFE started a while back now. So we've had now a whole year of all this advanced new research being done that argues a whole new understanding of our reality that we never really thought too much about before. And I love it because it sparked the whole flat earth community to now become more smarter. Why do we believe in what we do? And
Yeah.
it's very quite interesting seeing how the community reacted to this.
Now, did you catch the 2025 Flat Earth conference that Kingdom and Context put on by any chance?
Yeah, I was watching parts of it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it
Now,
all. It looked pretty cool. I remember there's like 30 people there.
Yeah, it was very encouraging to me because the consensus I got was like in this gathering, they were not denying the 24-hour sun, which was very encouraging because, like you're saying, there's kind of like a whole subsect that really adamantly calls it fake, but it was so comforting to hear all these like-minded individuals come together on that conference and really seem to be going the right direction from my perspective as far as where does the truth lead, where does observable, testable reality lead. I was very encouraged by it. So it's good to see that there is that side of the community that is taking these things seriously, isn't running from them, just isn't just pointing the finger and calling everyone a shill and saying this is all false and whoever believes otherwise is a fake. It's good to see some level-headed individuals. In fact, that Dr. Zach guy that I mentioned earlier, he was part of that conference and it was really fun to see. I hadn't seen him do something in quite some time, but I gotta send you that sun video. You'll really appreciate it, I believe. Oh, and there's another video I should have probably pulled up before you came. Have you seen the airplane footage of the 24-hour sun at the same time put out by Following the King by any
No,
chance?
how did they get an airplane like at Union Glacier?
Brother, you're gonna love this. I'm gonna send you this footage and these links.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll put them in the description of this video too. But some gentleman from it's called Following the King on Facebook. But they
okay.
have aerial footage and they're talking about the same thing you're talking about, essentially, where you can see the general physical sun, and then as it shifts over to sort of that inverted view from the dome optics, it's fascinating. So
Oh,
you'll love
wow.
having
Did they
this.
see like a transition or they see like some anomaly?
I have to watch it again, but essentially I think that was what was being implied, and
That's
you'll
really
just
cool.
yeah, you'll love this because it just goes right along with what you're studying, what you've been seeking to show. And it's a little page too. It's only like a few hundred people, I think, last I checked, followed it, but it's incredible
Wow.
footage, dude. Yeah, I'll send it over to you. You'll love it. Um, is there anything else? Because I think I covered everything I wanted to ask about. And is there, I mean, I would obviously encourage people to check out Stephen on Flat Earth University on Facebook. And then what was the name of your YouTube channel again?
Journal of Geocentric Cosmology. So
Yeah.
if anyone's looking for the links, I guess you're going to put them there as well. I
Yeah.
also have the link tree right here as well.
Yeah.
So I guess if you have Android, you want to get the Firmament Trackers Flat Earth app. It's free, and you can model a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about as well. You can see where the sun is, go to Union Glacier, and see how that all works. And in the Flat Earth University, FE 101 is free to enroll. So anyone who kind of likes the science and math wants to even get a refresher on these concepts like the ground position, the zenith, I think it's really important that we know why we believe in flat Earth and not just believe in it because like that's the thing. After 5 years, a lot of us kind of forget what got us into it in the first place, and that's one of the best things about the final experiment. It really forced us to go back to basics and get all that going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we
Absolutely.
covered everything. We covered the magnetic field asymmetry, 24-hour sun, the flat Earth graticule. That's very important to understand how you have to project a perfect sphere out to an oblate spheroid. Not everyone realizes that. That's the best counter argument where someone says it's a globe model. It says not. It has an equal standing to the globe model, but then for all the other reasons we discussed, it makes a lot more sense on flat Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a video, I may splice it into the end of this where he breaks down how those little miniature domes on his model operate. There was a really good video I watched that was on your YouTube channel, and maybe I'll try to find that
Oh,
again
yes.
and cut it in. But
Definitely do
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's been an awesome conversation with you, Stephen, and I'd love to have you back on in the future for updates and just to chat about what's going on because just I really appreciate your work and your diligence in this area, and I'm just praying that the Father continues to bless your path, brother, because it's been cool. It's been very cool. So
Well, thank you, Mike, so much. It was wonderful talking to you as well.
yeah, it's been awesome. All right, brother, and I'll send you those videos I was talking about.
Yeah, I can't wait to take a look at that.
All right, cool.
You
Have
have
a
a
good
good rest of
evening.
your night then. Take care. We just got Dave McKeegan's time-lapse footage of the 24-hour sun in Antarctica, and it's doing exactly what the Flat Earth model predicted it would do. This is fascinating. This is a big win for Flat Earth, even right now as it starts climbing up through their arc of vision. Look at that. Every prediction made by the Flat Earth model has come true. Why do flat Earth models have 8 billion domes over each observer? That's a good question because it shows that the person asking either wants to learn or is trying to do like a one up gotcha question, and then it reveals that they don't know what the equatorial grid is. And it also reveals that they don't even know the globe models. Any globe astronomical app will show this exact same dome that I have. We just zoom out so you can see the whole world. But it can be confusing. So over here on the right side of the screen, I am using Stellarium, and I placed us in Toronto, and that's where the top left observer is on the flat Earth model. So you can kind of already see from the right hand side there's a little dome above us here, even on the globe app, because we see in a spherical field of vision. That's just how it works. Now in Stellarium you can't zoom out because the globe, they're only limited to one observer. Because if you take, for example, the flat Earth model on the left hand side and try to wrap it around a ball, you can't zoom out to show people how the world really works because the world flat with a dome over us and everything's going around. So that's why on the flat Earth model, when someone's first presented to it and they see the bird's eye view, something that the globe just cannot do, it really impresses them, and they're wondering, okay, what is this? How does it work? And I can show you. It's not really that complicated. So you see how the sun here is going to be to the right of the observer. So I can go into the like exact same thing the globe does, because that is your perspective field. This is how you see. And then if I look to the right, will the sun be there? Where is my sun? Okay, yeah, my sun's right there. That's my perspective. And then on the globe app, if I look to the right, you're gonna see it. That's just how perspective works. Now, what an astronomical model such as the flat Earth can do is we can then zoom out, and you can now see, okay, where is this light actually coming from? How does the sun shine through the dome firmament, and how does the dome refraction end up putting a light to each observer? Now, to be clear, the globe model doesn't even attempt this. They don't even have an argument. All they do is just first person views like this. So you see now how we're in Ukraine, and then according to the flat Earth model, if I look to the left, we'll see the sun should be just rising. And that is correct. You see that the globe can replicate the flat Earth model pretty well. So they know that the sun is there, but they can't actually tell you that, okay, it's this high on the dome firmament. So let's see, we know that right now the sun is actually 4,031 miles above us in altitude on the firmament. And that's because this is a quantified astronomical model. And then finally, if we go to Argentina, let's also open that up in our Stellarium, facing north and looking up. Yeah, the sun's right there just like it shows, except now we notice that the wrapping of stars, that celestial pole, is facing to the south. Why?
Well, simply put, you're now on the opposite side of Earth's torus field. So you see right here how in the flat Earth model we can turn on the toroidal field that's coming out of Mount Meru, and we can actually see how it looks. And then it becomes very clear, okay, why do we have an equator? Well, because it's the middle of the magnetic field. So then it makes sense how star shells work, how perspective works, how all these little domes work. That's why. I don't want to go into that too much. That's another video. I just want to explain why any astronomical model, including the globe, does have 8 billion little domes over them, and that's perfectly fine. It's called the equatorial grid. So when you go into Stellarium, use that bottom menu down here. Stellarium's a free app, which is a very good introduction to how the world works. It's extremely basic, but if you don't even know about the equatorial grid, check it out, see how it works. It's very, very cool, and you can compare it to the flat Earth model and see how they're similar, what the limitations are of the globe model, and the superiority of the flat Earth model. Because what we can do is we can actually now like see, okay, where is everything on the firmament, and how is it now being projected down through due to the refraction as light shines on a dome. It's quite fascinating, and it's accurate. We just did 3 observers to show that it is 100% accurate. It was Toronto, Ukraine, and Argentina. Matches exactly what the flat Earth model predicts, except we can zoom out to see. But again, if zooming out confuses you, if you're a glober and you're new to like science and this is the first time being introduced, you can use the button up here to go into the first person view, and you can see how the astronomy apps that you may be used to kind of work the same. So start with this and then work your way out to seeing how the world actually works, and then seeing all the little perspective domes. So I hope that clarified everything. Have a great day, guys.